I quite like the idea of a giallo set in Dublin, although I can tell you that Irish eyes will not be smiling in this film. They're more likely to be getting melted by acid. Hi guys, so a very quick disclaimer before we get into it. There will be light spoilers today, although I will at least refrain from giving away who the killer is, seeing as this is a giallo film. So the other day I received this very nice gift from a follower of the channel, a chap called Adrian. Thank you very much for that. But aside from the fact that it's always nice to receive something like this from someone, this has actually come at a really good time for me in terms of where I am with giallo, because I had that long run of watching Argento films last year, did reviews for all of those films, had a really good time with that, but I'd intended to go on and watch more giallo films, non-Argento giallo films, and it's not really happened for me up until this point. So receiving this film through the post has kind of felt like a little bit of a kick up the arse for me to get back into this subgenre. Where I am with giallo right now, I guess the equivalent position in the slasher genre would be someone who has seen all of the Halloweens and Fridays but hasn't gone on to discover all the more one-off hidden gems like the Burning or the Prowler. Insert your own famous slasher film. That's where I am with giallo, effectively. So in this film, Iguana with the Tongue of Fire, there's no iguanas, by the way, don't get your hopes up. We follow a Swiss family who have moved to Ireland. I think they're Swiss. I'm sure at one point in this film it's mentioned that they're Dutch, but I could be wrong about that. Let's just assume that they're Swiss. But the head of this family is an ambassador for Switzerland. He's a politician type figure. So for work purposes, he's had to move his family to this mansion just outside Dublin. They're very wealthy, this lot. They've got like chauffeurs and butlers. But not long after their move, they start to get picked off one by a mysterious killer, and throughout this story we follow the various investigations from police, both in an official capacity and an unofficial capacity as well. We also spend a lot of time with the family and the various employees as they try to avoid becoming the next victim. So it's a reasonably standard giallo setup, I guess, with the slight quirk being that the film is in Ireland, and also the MO of the killer is a bit unusual as well. He likes to throw, or she likes to throw acid into the victim's face before then slicing the throat. I don't know what the point of the acid part is. Surely the throat slice would be enough, but anyway. The film was directed by a guy called Riccardo Freda, I think his name is. You might remember him from such hits as The Gay Swordsman and Mexican Sleigh Ride, but do check out his other work as well. Don't just watch the obvious ones. The strange thing with this film, though, is that he actually disowned it for some reason, so he wasn't pleased with the final product of this, so he insisted that his name be changed to a false name on the titles, Willie Pareto or something like that. I'll say at this point, I really enjoyed this film, so I don't understand why this director would just chuck away his credit for this. That is just really odd to me. It's not the first time it's happened. More famously, of course, David Fincher with Alien 3 disowned that film, although he stopped short of having his name changed, but certainly he wants nothing to do with that film, although personally I really enjoy Alien 3, but hey-ho, the director of the film can do that if he wants. In terms of actors, I only really recognise Anton Diffring in this. I mostly remember him from Where Eagles Dare, one of my favourite films of all time. He plays a Nazi general in that film who gets shot by Richard Burton. He's also in an early Hammer film called The Man Who Could Cheat Death. Not one of Hammer's best, but Diffring had the main role in that. In this film, it does feel like he's the main star power. Certainly, I didn't recognise any of the other actors in this film, although they're fine. You know, they do their jobs, they die when they need to, they don't die when they need to, and they get naked when they need to. They are fine. This is a film that really doesn't want you to know who the killer is. There are so many different characters in this, so many potential suspects. It's hard to do any kind of mid-film analysis with this in terms of picking out who the killer is likely to be. In the finale, when the killer does get revealed, my first reaction was, okay, so who was that again? But that just shows you how many different people there are in this film and how hard it is to keep track of them all. I will say it is a film that rewards multiple viewings, and don't take that as a negative. For example, I watched the commentary track the night after I watched this. And not only did I enjoy all the various tidbits that the commentators were coming out with, but seeing the film again gave me a chance to see all the different scenes and where all the characters were in relation to each other. It gave me a chance to focus my brain a bit more on the killer in his or her scenes, and I just found it really enjoyable the second time around, even though it was only 24 hours later. I will tell you one person who is not the killer, if that's okay. There are lots of characters in this, so I don't think it'll affect your enjoyment of the film too much. It is not the daughter of the ambassador. Now, I watched this film with my wife. She doesn't normally watch films like this with me. She's not into horror films and gory films. But she started watching this and she seemed to find it really funny and corny somehow. I don't know why she would think that. But at one point she said to me, "Who do you think's doing it?" And I said to her, "Oh, it's the daughter of the ambassador. Trust me, I'm experienced in this. I can recognise the game. You know, I think it's the daughter of the ambassador." Literally the next scene, the daughter's walking down the street, taxi cab pulls up, the killer leans out, throws some acid at her, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe it's not her, but it's a difficult film to get a handle on in terms of who the killer is. And it's not just the multitude of characters, but also the film likes to show you lots of clues in close-ups, like objects and things. We get lots of aggressive close-ups in this film. The camera will literally zoom in really fast and stop like 1 inch from either a person's face or an object. It'll do it to like sunglasses, and there'll be like a big booming sound effect to go along with it, or like a ring on somebody's finger. And it's like the film is saying, this is an important clue, which you should either already know the importance of this or bear it in mind for later, but it rarely ends up having any relevance. Like, there's about 10 characters in this film who have sunglasses, so what difference does it make if we spot somebody wearing sunglasses somewhere suspicious, you know? I think the character most affected by the close-ups is this doctor character whose name I can't remember, but when the camera zooms in on him, his face is so sinister that I just couldn't help laughing. And there's one scene where the doctor is in his checkup room and he's fixing up the neck of a character called Norton, an Irish cop. He's just giving him some stitches or something for a cut on his neck, and he picks up like a scalpel and just looks at it like with this really suspicious look, like he's trying to work out where to bury it in the back of Norton's neck. He's like, it's that the film is really trying to get you to think that it's this doctor character, and then he goes and starts actually putting the stitches in or something with this scalpel or whatever it is he's using, and Norton starts talking about the murders, and then this doctor says something like, "You'll never find him. He's way too clever for that." It's like, I've never seen a more obvious attempt by a movie to get you to think that it's that somebody, a specific somebody, is the killer. But it's really funny. There's lots of quirky little side characters in this film that I really liked. Even Norton himself, though he's more of a main character, but his dialogue's really funny. He reminds me of that Irish cop from The Card Player, but I think this particular character is funnier for me. Like, he takes this woman home at one point, and when they get to her door, he says something like, "So do you want to do it in the bushes or the car?" And just little lines like that from him really amuse me throughout the film. But some of the side characters that are interesting, there's like a butler who seems to know a secret passage in Anton Diffring's house. It's really random, this scene. Like, there's like a library and there's like a fake bookshelf that just spins around and the butler's head pops out, and we never find out anything more about that. He's just apparently using a secret passage in the house. I don't know if the actual family know about this passage or whether it's just the butler. It's just kind of odd but funny at the same time. And there's also a granny who every now and again throughout this she says who she thinks the killer is just by reading the newspaper. It's kind of weird. And there's also another cop. So Norton is like the unofficial investigator on this, and we get a more official investigator, but this other cop is a lot older and he looks exactly like Eric Morecambe. I could not watch any of his scenes without thinking about Eric Morecambe. I just kept expecting him to do a little two-step at any point or just come out with a joke. But certainly one of the film's strengths is its variety of different characters. You just come in and do a little bit and just amuse you in some weird way. Another strength of this movie is the scenery. When you get asked to check out a film like this from 1970 that you've never heard of, your first instinct can be along the lines of, oh, that's probably some really low budget film that the rest of the world has not heard of either. But I think they mentioned in the commentary that this film has had a reasonable amount of money put into it, because it came out at a time when movie investors were willing to speculate a little bit on giallo films, whereas maybe in the late 70s, early 80s, they weren't as willing to do that. I think that was the general gist of what they were saying. But I watched this and felt like it was pretty reasonably budgeted. There are a lot of spectacular scenes that didn't need to be there, but because they had the time and the money to do it, they've gone and done them. You know, at the forefront of my mind when I'm talking about this is the scene on the cliff edge where Norton and the daughter of the ambassador, I wish I knew her character name, they're just walking along, and it looks like they are literally 2 feet away from the most spectacular drop you have ever seen, and it looks like they're there for real. I can't see any illusion in this scene. It literally looks like they're doing this right there by the edge, and it looks frigging amazing. I mean, it's just fantastic. But in theory, you could do this exact same dialogue scene in a cafe and it wouldn't make any difference, but because they've had the time and the money to go and do something truly spectacular, they've done it. They've location scouted and they've gone out there and put those actors on the cliff edge, which I can't imagine was very comfortable for them, if indeed that's where they were and it's not just some kind of illusion. But it's not just this scene. The plot moves to Switzerland briefly in this. We get some spectacular snowy settings and a rather comical bobsled crash. But we've got these changes of scenery quite regularly throughout this film, and I really appreciated that. I've always been a sucker for this kind of stuff, and I don't always get to see it because I'm someone who spends a lot of time watching horror. You know, not the best genre for this, to see this sort of thing in it, but this particular film had it in abundance, even in small doses. Like when Anton Diffring walks into his mansion from his garden, you see these spectacular grounds, and then in the dialogue scene that follows, he walks to the window, stands by the window, just so you, the viewer, can look out into this amazing looking set of gardens and stuff. And there's another scene where characters are going up this winding staircase, and there's like all these massive big paintings and things that are right out of an art gallery. There's just some great production design and scenery throughout all of this film, and it definitely was something else that I really enjoyed about this. On the downside, special effects are not so hot, mainly when it comes to the kills. Now, the film is smart enough to let you have the characters discover a lot of the dead bodies in this film. We don't see all of the deaths happening because that would have been a lot of effort having to be done on special effects and stuff. But the effects that we do see on the kills that we do see are not always great. Now, I'm not going to jump on the film's back too much about this, given that I've had the benefit of seeing the next 50 years of cinema, whereas at the time this film was made, you know, the director and the special effects department and stuff, as far as they're concerned, in 1970, this was probably some decent effects they were doing, but they just don't look too great now. Like the first kill in this movie, yeah, they spent some time setting up some kind of practical effect with the acid on the face, but it doesn't look that great. And the neck looks a bit rubbery as well. And I think the camera just lingers a little bit too long on it. But the absolute worst moment of the film, and again, it's because of something to do with special effects, is in the finale with the final fight. There's like a teenage girl who gets acid in the face, but instead of just have the camera focus on the fight that's going on in that same room, for some reason the camera keeps going back to this teenage girl, and we keep zooming in on this damaged face that she's got from the acid, but it doesn't look that damaged when you go up close to it. And for some reason the girl is not freaking out. She's down on the ground almost like she's getting ready to play with the toy train or something. It's like she should be panicking and freaking out, but she's not. It's a bit weird. I just don't understand why they just didn't have her put her hands in front of her face and have blood seeping out from underneath. You could cheat it a little bit, you know, but unless the intention was to show the audience that, you know, this is just a 14-year-old girl. She's not that badly hurt, really. She's got a bit lucky. I don't know. Maybe they were worried about just what people would think about having a teenage girl be acid attacked, but it's a weird one for me. It's certainly the weakest part of the film, but on the whole, I enjoyed the whole thing. I enjoyed this way more than I thought I did. It's really got me back into that giallo feel that I had when I was watching all those Argento films. This does feel a little bit like some of those early Argentos from the early 70s, things like The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. It's even got the animal in the title with this. And this film can compete with those sorts of films. I thought it was really good. I was entertained by it all the way through. I really got into the horror aspect of it and trying to guess who the killer was, enjoyed the scenery, lots to enjoy in this. It was right up my street, and definitely a film that I would absolutely go back to in the future, I've got to say. So I'll quickly show you the version of the film that I've got for this. I briefly held it up earlier, but here it is again. Here is my Blu-ray copy of The Iguana and The Tongue of Fire, thanks to my new friend Adrian, who is actually the same guy who is on the commentary track for this. Yes, Adrian is somebody who does some work for Arrow doing their various commentary tracks, and really cool for me actually to get acquainted with somebody who does this kind of stuff. It's been nice to get to know him, and there's lots of other features on this. I'll just briefly read some of them out. So there is a video appreciation by cultural critic and academic Richard Dyer called Of Chameleons and Iguanas. There's also something called Considering Cipriani, a new appreciation of the composer Stelvio Cipriani and his score to The Iguana of the Tongue of Fire by DJ and soundtrack collector Lovely John. You know what, I'm not going to read all of them out. They are quite long-winded in terms of how they're titled, but there's a few bits and bats. Though I'd say the main attraction of all of these is the commentary track, which I thoroughly enjoyed. There's image galleries and a few other little bits and bats. And, almost forgot actually, there's also this incredible booklet in this, all about the film and the era of the time. I love it when Blu-rays come with things like this, just absolutely fantastic. So I thoroughly recommend not only this film, but also this version of it, absolutely terrific. But there's one more thing left to do here, of course, which is to go to the Bag of Terror and find out what sort of score I'm going to give Iguana with the Tongue of Fire. We've got 1 bloody axe, 2, 3, and 4. 4 out of 5 for me. Excellent movie. I really, really enjoyed it, and I'm hoping to check out more giallo films soon. This has really got me back into it. So there we have it. Do try and catch this film any way you can, especially if you like giallo, especially. Right, I'll be back soon. Until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.